Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to the minigame podcast for Monday, March 17th. We'll do about an hour of warm-up, and then we'll jump into the video game news. I'm gonna do something today that I would definitely complain about other content creators doing, which is just show off a list in Notepad out of pure laziness. So for the first time in probably at least 2 years, maybe longer, I decided to actually buy some games during the Steam spring sale, and so I figured I would show them off. Clearly there's got to be a better way to do this as far as actually showing off the games. So yeah, generally my thought here is to get Lego games. The last of the Lego games I don't own, because Lego is bringing game development in-house, and I wouldn't be surprised, I wouldn't be totally surprised, I'd be a little surprised if Lego started to pull the license from Lego games made by other people. That would include Lego Brick Tales and Lego Builder's Journeys, and of course the Warner Brothers subsidiary TT Games Lego games, like the Lego Harry Potter collection and the Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, which I think the Harry Potter collection is really just a re-release of the Lego Harry Potter games. Maybe there's a little bit of improvement here. And so yeah, this is just straight up copied from my purchase history from Steam. And then there were some other good deals, like Dungeon Keeper 1 and 2, although it's Dungeon Keeper Gold and 2. You probably don't want any other version than Dungeon Keeper Gold for the first version. And then Forgotten End for $2.15, Heavy Rain for $2.15. Prices are frankly dirt cheap on everything else I got. Mark Echo's getting up. These are things that are on my wish list. I also went through my wish list, and a surprising amount of games have been delisted from Steam that were on my wish list. Like, way more than I would have thought. There's quite a few games on my wish list that are not completely delisted, to the point that I couldn't even tell you what they were, but they have been pulled from sale. And so when you click on them to go to their page, it says that at the publisher's request, this game has been pulled from sale. One of the games that's been delisted or pulled from sale was one of the Leisure Suit Larry games, although I think it was particularly a pretty bad one. But I figured I'd get Wet Dreams Dry Twice, the sequel to Wet Dreams Don't Die, which would be, I think, either the newest Leisure Suit Larry game or the second newest one, which completes that collection stupidly. I don't know if I could really cover any of the Leisure Suit Larry games, even though there really isn't a ton of adult content in it, and it really is just kind of a joke game series. There might be a little bit here and there that might fall afoul of YouTube family friendlies rules. I want to play No More Heroes 2, so I pulled the trigger on that. Definitely making an effort here to get games also that I actually want to play, and less just getting cheap things. I want to play the Talos Principle 2, so I definitely got that. And frankly, I will probably start playing the Talos Principle 2 within a few days, probably tomorrow. There's two versions of Puzzletronics. There's an analog logic and a digital logic. I grabbed one, that way I don't end up spending a whopping $1.50 or so, $1.25 for both, if one turns out to be annoying. Although in reality, if I was going to cover this, I probably would end up just wanting to buy the digital logic and play them back to back, which is what I've been doing, or at least I've been doing something similar to that in that I've been playing Lines X, then Lines X Free, then Lines Infinity, which are 3 very similar games. And if you like what the puzzle games are, they're very simplistic puzzle games, I'd say just get Lines Infinity. I guess the most I paid for was the Lego Harry Potter collection at $17.31, which is still about only a third to a fourth of what you'd pay if you're paying for a $70 deluxe edition or $80 deluxe edition of a game, brand new for consoles. And yeah, these are fairly consistent prices. Some of these games are more niche, and so the price is a little bit higher. Some of these games are fairly new, so the price is higher. Lego Star Wars The Saga had DLC, which bumped it up a bit for what you're actually getting. The rest of these, not so much. But then the subtotal and discount, as the way they calculate it, is kind of BS, because they are certainly manipulating the prices on Steam more than anywhere else to have a high MSRP price that almost nobody ever buys the game at a 0% discount, and it's very rare that a lot of games even are at 0% discounts. I guess technically, if it's like stores, half-off stores, for instance, have to have half of their inventory legally at 100%, no discount, so that half the time, so that they can claim that it is actually half off. So they often will just have different colored tags, and on like Tuesdays the blue tags are half off, and then on Wednesdays the red tags are half off. Or a lot of times they will literally just cycle their inventory over and re-tag everything half the time. But yeah, theoretically, if I bought all of these games, I would have spent $326.85. I got 76% discount on average, saving $249.40. And then tax is not really an issue. So even at that, though, even getting like dirt cheap things, once you start to buy in bulk, once you're not a gamer who just buys 3 games per year, the money goes up. $83.81. Like, it sure would have been nice if that was half that price. Sure would have been nice if it was $20, but to get it that low, I would have just been buying a lot of very cheap 59-cent games, which I already have a ton of those already. So yeah, I think I'm happy enough with that. Will I catch the next sale? Probably not. It's gonna come down to just how busy I am. I'm still, I buy all these games and I'm still not anywhere close to being done with taxes, and not anywhere close to getting my house decluttered and cleaned like it should be. So I've got plenty of non-video game stuff to do, but there is kind of a balance I'm trying to associate and create here. I also, in that process, realized that there is a way to see your recently played on Steam, and so there can be a level of accountability. So I'm thinking, as part of the pages we look at, I might use the recently played. That being said, there are a couple problems in that. First of all, 3D Mark isn't really a game, it's just testing my computer, which I do that whenever something weird is happening on my computer. It reboots randomly. And then I launched Alaska's Solitaire classic card game, but really it's just kind of an advertisement for a paid solitaire game that's really just a mobile phone game that they ported to PC, and so it's really an advertisement for, I think it's called 120 plus solitaire games, and Alaska Solitaire is just one variant of solitaire that's like way too difficult. So I didn't make any footage on that, and you can see it only played it for 4 minutes. Whereas I did make footage around Boom. Awful game, cannot recommend it at all. But it was weeks ago, basically, when I last played Borderlands the pre-sequel. Awful game, can't recommend it. Yeah, really can't. And then EOS here says I played 13 hours on that. No way I played 13 hours on this. This is a student demo that is barely an hour and a half. So I just left it running and fell asleep for probably about 12 hours of that. Speaking of sleeping, I feel like I slept through most of this weekend. Somewhere on Thursday, I think, I drank a 5-hour energy drink to try and stay up all night and shift my sleep schedule a bit, and it didn't really work and made me very fuzzy headed and just gave me a lot of negative side effects for very little benefits. Yeah, I really should never drink 5-hour energy drinks at this point. They worked in emergencies when I was younger, on a rare occasion, once a year at most. It will keep you awake, but your brain may not be awake drinking 5-hour energy. So yeah, the student project, I don't want to be too cruel, but it's not particularly good. And then I was playing Kathy Rain, and I played some of these games out of order, and these are definitely out of order, I think. Although, yeah, they definitely are in just kind of a random order. Maybe alphabetical order. HIJKL. Yeah, I guess that is it. They are just in alphabetical order. Kathy Rain is a point-and-click adventure game. Does a real bad job in the first 3 or 4 hours foreshadowing just how surreal and sci-fi the end part of the game is. So you're really thrown through a loop, and then it just does a really bad job overall as far as being a point-and-click adventure game, because it's incredibly route one. You find the key, you use the key in the lock. That's basically every puzzle, the level of skill you will use in every puzzle in Kathy Rain. And it just feels like it's frankly a little insulting that they came out with a director's cut version of Kathy Rain to sell it all over again, promising that the ending will be more satisfactory in the director's cut. And while there was a discount to buy the director's cut, I still think in the end you'd end up spending a lot of time. It felt like I probably did spend 35 hours playing Kathy Rain, but nah, that's probably not true. Probably 10 hours, maybe 15. But yeah, you'd still spend, I think, a lot of time playing the director's cut, experiencing the same issues and problems, which it had a lot of them. And then yeah, I played Lines X, which is a single screen Unity minimalistic puzzle game, achievement game really, giving 590 achievements. This was one of those games released before Steam had rules limiting games down to 100 achievements. And then I played Line X Free, which is just like 50 more puzzles of Lines X. And then I played Lines Infinity, which is just 100 more puzzles of Lines X. This game came out a little bit later. The puzzles perhaps a little bit better, limited down to 100 achievements. One of the things these achievement games do is they give you achievements that in this case was words and then backers, just names of things that you could have put on your profile. Once it got limited down to 100, they started putting letters so you could spell something out on your profile. Of course, it's a big jump from potentially having 5 or 6 spots where you can have 5 or 6 words to having 5 or 6 spots where you can have just letters. I played 6 Sides of the World. An alright game, but definitely had some problems too. And then Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel I just used to run audio in the background. So yeah, for the past couple of weeks, that's what I've been doing. Now, is it any better is the big question as far as whether I use this page to talk about what I've been doing, or is it better to be scrolling down the SteamDB concurrent player chart when I'm talking about what I'm doing? That's the question. If I get one more game for free or otherwise, I'll be at 1,800 games in total, which, yeah, I suppose that's a round number, so somewhat of a milestone. That was another thing I did during the Steam sales, go down my wish list and just really go from top to bottom on the wish list, and anything that was free I was just adding to my library. In the past, I've been reticent to actually add games to my library if they're free, because I then wouldn't really remember them, and then I would probably not remember that I got them for free. Not that that really is going to affect my reviews in any way, but yeah, it's a higher priority to me to actually get the games, particularly if games are disappearing and being pulled from sale, than it is to just have them in the wish list. Plus, that cleans up the wish list in general. But yeah, all of those games that were added, it was maybe 6 or 7 of them. Yeah. I probably won't play any of them anytime soon, if ever. As far as the SteamDB concurrent chart, we can see Counter-Strike 2 is still at the top. No duh. Monster Hunter Wilds may have fallen down 1 spot. Repo is way up here, beating Marvel Rivals now. And I guess that does highlight a risk here that Marvel Rivals may have just been the game of the week and may not have a long-term fan base that sticks around for the long haul. Split Fiction is fairly high still. Delta Force may be new. Let's see. Do I see anything else new as far as what people are playing? If anything, I think we will. It Takes Two has probably gotten a bit of a bump, just because Split Fiction came out and they are extremely similar games. There might be a real advantage that Split Fiction has over It Takes Two, in that It Takes Two is about a husband and wife on the verge of breaking up and getting a divorce, whereas It Takes Two is just 2 random strangers ending up having to work together. They're both authors, but I don't think they have any deep personal conflict other than that. Other than the fact that one is a sci-fi writer and the other is a fantasy writer. Which, yeah, that aspect certainly could trigger a few people as far as, do you really want to play a game where the central theme is a marriage falling apart? I didn't get Belotro during the summer sale. A little too expensive still as a newer game. There's several other games also that I wanted to get, such as like the Saboteur, but I was also trying to not break the bank completely. It is kind of crazy the OBS Studio makes it to the top 100. Particularly since this is the Steam version of OBS Studio, which if you were running on like the Steam Deck, you would be using the desktop version in the Flatpak version of OBS Studio. And more than likely, if you're trying to record and stream things on Windows, you probably shouldn't be using the Steam version either. Not that there's really anything wrong with the Steam version, it's just going to be a little bit behind. Although, in fairness, I don't even run the most recent version of OBS. I try to stay one number behind. Anyways, yeah. I don't know what real advantage there is to have Steam in your OBS in your Steam library. It's a free program. It doesn't cost anything, so at a certain point you are just it's the same thing with like RetroArch. There's really not a good reason why you'd ever have RetroArch, the Steam version, installed versus RetroArch, a standalone version, installed. But yeah, clearly the numbers are saying that a lot of people do use OBS. It is kind of a sad statement that when you see like Desktop Engine or 3D Mark or OBS, that means that like every single one of these games here from 101 to 200 is being used less in the last 24 hours than OBS was. Although, in fairness, you could be using OBS and playing a game at the same time. But if you... yeah. I guess that doesn't change much. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. And I feel like today, since I'm streaming earlier, I'm not going to have too much news. And I may just get through things a lot easier today. Yeah. I actually don't really have too much else to say. Still watching Psych. Still watching Cracking the Cryptic on YouTube. Playing along with Sudoku puzzles, which is still taking way too much time up. I think I'm at the end of season 6. I may have said that I was into season 7 of Psych. And yeah, definitely feels like there's a different writer in charge at season 6. This is the point where the main protagonist is dating the main female detective, and it does seem like they are going to kind of speed through that romance kind of quickly, because they're already hinting at marriage proposals. While overall I am enjoying Psych Season 6 a lot more than I was enjoying, a lot more than I was enjoying Season 1 through 3. I enjoyed 1 through 3. I just felt like the jokes were aged poorly. And even in Season 6, there still are a decent amount of gay panic jokes that I feel like age fairly poorly. but that they're written slightly differently. I think they're done a little bit more tastefully. But then by season 6, they also are starting to just repeat jokes and make callbacks. And then the biggest thing is there's just a lot more episodes that are straight up parodies. So like the most recent one I saw was just a joke parody of The Shining. But yeah, there's still a murder and an investigation every week, but it's being built around parodies of other things. And so it feels like there's been a distinct change. Some people might have said it's jumped the shark. I don't think so. If anything, I would argue it grew the beard, which that's the phrase, or growing a beard is the phrase that Riker in Star Trek The Next Generation grew a beard, and then that was just about the time when Star Trek The Next Generation started to get better. But yeah, it is definitely a different thing. And I can definitely see why USA would want to have something closer to like Monk, where the idea of him pretending to be a psychic detective as a gimmick has to be touched incredibly lightly and very little suspicion about whether he really is a psychic is ever actually applied, because the truth is the silliness and the unrealisticness of the situation would fall apart if it was questioned at all. Yeah, there's an obvious thing there that even if the police did believe he was a psychic, they would never hire him because he would taint any possible convictions. And that almost feels like that should have been something that happened is around the end of the series, is that every single conviction would come up for appeal because it's revealed that they had hired a psychic person, consultant, who then they could cast all kinds of doubt about whether they were legitimate convictions or not. And yeah, I don't know how Psych ends, but it kind of feels like a big court case where he has to prove he's psychic or somehow prevent the convictions from being overturned for every single case that he's been involved with, would be the biggest way to go out as far as the show goes. In the case of Monk, in contrast, Monk was an actual detective with the actual training, and he just developed severe OCDs and germophobia and things like that. So there's actual training there and an actual reason why you might bring him back as a consultant. Plus, in the case of Monk, he's not being silly intentionally. But yeah, I kind of wish they had some new jokes by season 6. They are very much just kind of repeating the same old, same old. We'll briefly look at my chart here and then move on. I guess I'm not really watching anything else. Yeah, Below was $12.74. If Silent Hill was actually discounted more, I might have considered that. But yeah, featured deep discounts is what I'm really looking for. Yeah, and I double checked, and there is no specific page for this sale. It is just a front page, and they are doing several experiments here in what they would potentially eventually just update the Steam front page to be. For instance, this discovery queue is doing a different thing in that it's much bigger. And this might be a lab feature that I actually turned on. So this may not be how you see discovery queues on Steam. And then they're giving away 3 stickers when you go through the discovery queue. And you can do it 3 times. But it's not 3 per day. Or 9 per day. It is straight up just 9 overall. So you've earned all the stickers. So if I open that, I'll show that in a second. Which, yeah, with the exception of the discovery queue, the rest of this page is all about just getting you to continue to scroll down until you find something that you're interested in buying, and then from that you click it and open it new. Callisto Protocol still mixed reviewed, and you can still hover over games to get the descriptions and things like that. But yeah, scrolling down here, I don't imagine I'll get anything different. I did consider getting the Halo Master Chief Collection. I probably would never get around to actually playing any of that. But it is a thought. I did consider getting Escape Simulator, even though that is heavily encouraged to play multiplayer. You can play that single player. I'm keeping the Steam Deck in my wish list, but actually the only reason I'm doing that is if they ever did like a giveaway of Steam Decks for people who wish listed them, which they sort of implied something like that might have happened once. And I don't even think you really get to pick what you wish list as far as having a Steam Deck, and since I already have one Steam Deck, me getting another, I did used to ask people to gift me things on my wish list. I doubt anybody would be generous enough to ever gift a Steam Deck to me. If I got an extra one, I would give it away to a niece or nephew, more than likely, which I have several of those, so while that would be nice, that is also highly unlikely to ever happen. I did consider getting Chrono Trigger, but again, I don't think I'd really play Chrono Trigger, so I'm really just padding up my collection for some future point. And I don't know when that future point, if it would ever come, would be. Some future point when I have a lot more time and I'm willing to commit to a lot more. In fact, a lot of stuff on this front page are things I considered. Let's look at this one. I don't know if that's even out yet. Inscription would have been a good one. It's slightly expensive, but not too expensive. Really? That was certainly another thing that I noticed on my wish list, is that there's usually, during a sale, a good percentage of games that are not on sale. Thought about Hogwarts Legacy also. Just getting WB games in particular. They in the similar way that getting Lego games for fear they might get delisted, there's a good argument to get Warner Brothers games for fear that they might get delisted. Suicide Squad already delisted, I know, or close to being delisted, and nobody really cares about that game, but the good Warner Brothers games like Hogwarts Legacy could also fall apart, because at any point I could see AT&T severely reducing WB, or just shuttering it or selling it off, causing huge changes. I could see Warner Brothers shutting down Warner Brothers games, And I could see Warner Brothers Games shutting down even more subsidiary offices. So there is very much a good argument to get Warner Brothers Games before they disappear. But there never is going to be a case where you're guaranteed to know when they would disappear, if they are going to disappear. Could be never, could be tomorrow. And it is kind of sucky that Valve and Steam doesn't have a preservation program of sorts to prevent games from being delisted. And I think there might be a push, certainly, for that. I heard this was getting received very well. Of course, it's not discounted. Oh, I also saw that, and this has nothing really to do with Hello Kitty other than the fact that they're both Japanese media. There's a new box set on Amazon for the Sailor Moon mangas, at least the first 6 issues. But looking deeper into the reviews, the box sets in general tend to be worse quality than buying the individual releases, and yeah, that seems to be the case with the box set too. So while you might get some nice fancy cardboard box on the outer part, the actual manga part would be less than quality, which that doesn't make a lot of sense to me coming from the anime DVD side, because almost always when there's a box set of anime DVDs, it's either the exact same discs if you bought them individually, or it's better discs that have more features. The actual video almost certainly would be the exact same. As far, they're not going to remaster a DVD between the individual releases in the in a box set release. Now I'm of course talking about United States Western versions of the DVDs. Who knows what the Japanese box sets are compared to the individual releases. Yeah, this is not out yet. That's what I thought. And then this is in early access, so that's why it's still on the follow list. Being received very positively. And then I have no idea why this isn't on my wish list. Pretty sure I saw people play this game and it's overwhelmingly positive, so maybe I'm thinking of a different game and maybe I just overlooked this one. Add that to the wish list right now. So here's the spring sale 2025 collection. Still don't really like the art style here. It's fine, but it's not particularly very detailed. So yeah, you get all 9 of these stickers, which I don't think stickers wear out. I think you can just use them forever in the chat. Because yeah, there wouldn't really be a way to renew the stickers at all. So yeah, you just have like these simplistic faces on all the characters. And they are just kind of dancing around, some more than others, just bopping around back and forth. And then if you want everything, you have to go to the point shop, not the pot shop, to get an animated avatar or an animated frame or a mini profile background or game profile. And then these profile backgrounds seem like they are the exact same backgrounds with just a color change. Yeah, none of that looks interesting or worth spending points on. Let's see if we've got any refurb Steam Decks today. Answer seems to be no. And yeah. So we didn't even really go 40 minutes today doing the setup, which is probably a good thing because after I'm done streaming, I probably will fall asleep. Yeah. It definitely is the case where right now I'm falling asleep around 1 or 2 in the afternoon, maybe noon, and then end up waking up at like maybe 7 in the evening, maybe 10, maybe 2 in the morning. Which that might be a little bit better if I could just shift it a little bit more, where I stayed up till 3 to 5 in the evening and then went to sleep and then slept through the night, or woke up early at 2 or 3 in the morning. That might work, because the main goal here is just to be awake during 9 to 5. I ran my macros once again. They really didn't work. I have a thought that I might work on them some more today. A big part of why they're not working is definitely not feeling like it's my fault. There definitely feels like there's just a Firefox thing here where pages get unloaded from memory or something like that, and it's just a big inconsistency. But yeah, there's more tweaks and more programming that I'd like to do to try and fix it as much as possible. But yeah, let's go through the Video Games Chronicle news stories, which there will only be a few. There's apparently more evidence pointing to an impending PS5 version of Starfield. User-created content library spotted displaying the PS5 logo. Okay. Yeah. Starfield is one of those weird games where it feels like it had a lot of relevancy a few years ago, but maybe never really had quite enough relevancy for me to want to play it and come back to it. And now it definitely is a case where I just can't imagine I'd ever really want to go back and play Starfield. I suppose there is a potential future out there where I've just start changing genres of games I'm playing and start to play more space games, which I've never really been a fan of space games. And then I would probably play Starfield. But yeah, barring that. Oh, I don't know if I talked about this. I got these first in, first out can organizers. I think I maybe mentioned that. And they're the ones I got first were for cans, and the ones I got second were for soda cans. I have very poorly designed shelves that are non-standard, so the space between the shelf is not tall enough to handle a regular can organizer. These are things where you put a can at the top and it rolls to the back and then falls down to another level and then rolls back to the front. So the small plastic soda can ones I got, I figured since they were just metal rods holding the two pieces together, that I could cut the metal rods and make them thinner for smaller soup cans, because there's really probably about 4 or 5 different types of cans out there, and while there is a customizable one that will fit on a regular shelf, I'm having to customize my own to fit on the wrong shelf. The shelves are too deep. Nothing's going to really fix that. The shelves are not wide enough, and the shelves are not tall enough to fit what you normally would get. And I definitely would recommend just getting the normal ones if you have a shelf that fits. There's two on Amazon I see. One looks like it's separated by plastic rods and dowels. Another has little slots, and you slot in each shelf divider into the slots. I would suggest the one with the slots. Although weirdly, there's actually like 3 or 4 versions of that, and you probably are better getting 4 of the smallest version than getting one of the largest version. So the ones I have, cutting the rods with tin snips was harder than I thought it would be, and flung the rods that were being cut off across my room. And every time I did that, I was like, man, I really should be wearing some safety glasses. And then there's just several pieces of plastic on the edges that I realized I would have to cut off. Again, using tin snips, and I was using some flush cutters for soldering to try and trim that up and make it smoother. And in the process of cutting plastic, I managed to break the flush cutters, so the metal broke instead of the plastic giving, which is weird to say the least, but I probably was using the tool inappropriately. And so again, I should have been wearing safety glasses. Now, I managed not to hurt myself in any way there, so I got extremely lucky, but yeah. Suffice it to say, I realized I needed some more tools and like better tools to get back to it. So yeah, it's a real shame, because to get the bigger soup cans to work, I need to open up the opening at the back. I need to open up the opening at the front, to just so there's a little bit more space, and I need to remove one of the 4 dowel rod holders as far as the metal rods to hold the 2 pieces together. So it would be now held together by 3 pieces of metal rod instead of 4. And yeah, really I wish they just had the exact same design, because it's a pretty great design otherwise. It even has a little bit of a rubber cushioning in the back of it so soda cans won't get shaken up as much as they fall downward. So yeah, it's a real nice design. They just needed to size it up for soup cans, or make some slight modifications so soup cans would work just as well. But yeah, unfortunately I didn't see anything like that. And I like the white plastic because it feels more solid than white rebar or chrome rebar, which is how most of the can organizers are. So I've got a whole other extra project I'm working on that could have killed myself with easily by flinging a blade into my eye. Now I'm waiting for new tools. So most of these projects, though, I'm actually making some level of progress to them too, as far as all that goes. Of course, taxes are still due on April 15th. Nothing changes that. Anyways, I'm supposed to be talking about video games, and I'm probably not warmed up enough. I also tried to bake a cake using baking soda and vinegar as a replacement for eggs, which is what they say you can do, and I think it's worked for me on cookies, but I think twice now I've tried to bake a cake doing that, and twice now it has not worked. I'm not going to try that a third time. Instead, just use powdered eggs and see how that works as a egg substitute. Applesauce is also a substitute, but I've actually had a real hard time getting applesauce delivered. I don't know why. Anyways, video game news. Yeah. Not only do we not have that much, I can't even stay on track. I can feel my brain is swimming right now, and I really am approaching far too close to falling asleep than I really should be. PS5 Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake is still in development, studio confirms. Nothing has been seen of the PlayStation game since it was announced years ago. How many years ago? September 2021. Okay. Yeah. I don't see a reason why you wouldn't continue to work on that at some level. There very well may be contractual reasons why you wouldn't say you wouldn't actually cancel it. I saw we've got like a lot of Star Wars news here in a row. I wonder why that's the case. I saw an interesting comparison meme on Reddit just a few hours ago where it showed a building and it said $1.5 billion to build the building, and then it showed GTA 6 and it said $2 billion, and I'm like, oh yeah, that is a very interesting comparison to say somebody's spending $2 billion to develop just a video game versus a physical building. But yeah, I do imagine Star Wars games in particular almost have unlimited budgets. Respawn's next Star Wars game confirmed for reveal. Star Wars strategy game will be revealed at a celebration in April. So it seems like Star Wars announcements have been made. Maybe this is Disney trying to get more people hyped around Star Wars at the moment. I don't know if they've got anything really going with Star Wars right now. It may be that every TV show is just already ended at the moment. And then Video Games Chronicle is doing a first play, which, okay, we don't see too many of those listed. Maybe my macro closes that out, closes those tabs, and that's why I don't see them. Alloy actor reacts to AI powered leak. I'm worried for this art form. The Alloy actor says she worries for the future of performances in video games as AI looms. Yeah, that's pretty much, I imagine, a statement that any voice actor anywhere could make. It's not saying anything particularly special. And is it really worth an article in that headline? That would be my question. My other question is, in this screenshot, is she looking particularly fat? Because I changed the stretch on, let's see, not UI vision, where is it? Let's see. Yeah, she still looks particularly fat on the image here. This is one of the older images of Horizon 2, where again I suspect some of this is just face scan technology with very bad lighting, but some of this may also just be bad 3D modeling. But yeah, in fairness, it's not as bad as what it looks like when I have this stretch. And in most cases, the stretch doesn't do that much stretching to the face. And in almost any other case, I wouldn't notice it, except for there was huge controversy around the roundness and rotundness of her face in the second game compared to the first game. Which a lot of that really just comes down to gamers in particular don't like change, so don't particularly change the way a character looks in the middle of a trilogy. At the very least, if you're going to do a soft reboot, maybe that works. Yeah, I don't think this is really newsworthy. Like, that you pretty much would have known that actors are afraid of AI powered replacements. Certainly everybody, except for the people using AI, hates AI and is afraid it's going to steal jobs from people and make it harder for the lower class and middle class to actually earn a living. Moving on, 10 years after its release, Undertale has a new concurrent players record on Steam. I assume that's because it's 99 cents on sale, which has pushed the audience up. I didn't actually see Undertale. Which, in fairness, I probably am going to have Deltarune is not finished, I guess, if he's currently working on chapters 3 and 4. Do they not have a link to it on Steam? I'm not sure I'd ever get around to playing Undertale either. It's a big enough game that I think most people have already heard of it, and I'm not sure if apparently dropped is what I needed to click on. Yeah. Well, I already own it, so I guess that's why it wasn't being advertised to me. I have no idea when I bought this game. I must have been particularly overly ambitious to have bought this. Somebody may have actually gifted me this, come to think of it. As a real possibility. If that's true, thanks to that person, but again, I just can't imagine myself really playing it. And yeah, 10 years after its release, you would also kind of like some new content, either in the form of a new chapter drop for Deltarune or some update in Undertale. But yeah, that's probably asking a little too much. That perhaps also highlights an issue there, that Undertale was definitely a critical darling of a game and had a decent amount of sales, and still there is a limiting factor on how fast somebody can make sequels and make content by themselves, and some developers are just set at a certain pace and can't get faster. Some developers can never even finish their games. I definitely felt that with like The Witness, in that when I had finished The Witness, I really wished there had been a massive push to make a Witness 2, even if the person in charge of making the Witness 1 wasn't really involved. Which, yeah, he really wouldn't have to be involved if the same concept was just going to be expanded. You could pretty easily procedurally generate a lot more puzzles and create a new island, and not have any real different gimmick, and have something called The Witness 2 out in 4 years. or so. But I imagine he did want something to be something more unique in his next game, which he hasn't released the next game. And I think the creator of The Witness is Jonathan Blow, and if that's the case, he's mostly notorious for doing long live streams and complaining about the state of the gaming industry, which, while some of what he says is probably very accurate and true, also may just highlight that he's not putting his efforts to best use. Anyways, moving on, the Pokemon Centers are going to wage war on trading card game scalpers by removing plastic packaging from new boxes. The procedure will be used until further notice, says one. That, I guess, is going to come down to how many Pokemon Centers do you really have a chance to interact with. In the United States in particular, I think there's a Pokemon Center in like New York, and there's probably one in LA or somewhere in California, but I doubt there's one this is going to be done. Apparently the plastic packaging has already been removed in Japan for some time, and so now this is just in Singapore, which would be the first store to actually have English versions of the cards. It's not likely that that's going to change too much, and it might very well lead to some paranoia, maybe deserved paranoia, that the stores themselves are up to some shenanigans if the plastic seals are removed. And inherently, you can always put new plastic around a box of Pokemon cards and make it pretty easy or pretty difficult to tell that it's been shrink wrapped and re-plastic. They would have to be some holographic type technology, some anti-counterfeit type technology on the plastic wrap for that to prevent somebody from just taking regular clear plastic and wrapping up a box and sealing it with a machine. I've heard, maybe not for Pokemon cards, but I've heard of some stores straight up x-raying card packs to find if there are valuable cards in card packs before they sell them. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's all kinds of stores, probably not Pokemon stores, being run by Pokemon directly, but who knows. I wouldn't be surprised if there's all kinds of shenanigans that are being done to the packs as far as to figure out if they are valuable. This is clearly a case where the value of the cards have gotten too high and it's started to create real problems. And if I was going to make a trading card game or CCG, I would strive extremely hard to make sure that no card is particularly valuable and that every card is available in abundance. But that's because I would be a generous person and not the type of person to really make a CCG which is designed to rip off people and have them spend as much money as possible. Like the artificial scarcity and rarity of cards. That's why the prices are going up. Speaking of Pokemon TCG, I did happen to see that there's a wishlist function that you can do, but it seems like it's only useful to put a little heart in the corner of cards that you wishlisted when you're doing a wonder pick. It doesn't seem like it informs anybody you're trying to trade with what cards you would prefer to get, and that would be way more valuable as far as wishlisting a card goes. Nor in any way does it increase your odds of getting a card because it's wishlisted, which would be kind of nice if that happened also. Otherwise, though, there's nothing new going on with Pokemon TCG at the moment. Memento Mori is on to its next event and new characters once again. And I'm still playing the Ants Underground, although I don't know why. Like, I have hit a point now where upgrading some things takes 5 to 12 hours. And so less and less can be done when I hop into the game because everything just takes so long. Let's see. Star Wars Hunters shutdown was announced just 9 months after launch. Players will not be getting refunds for any season passes or microtransactions, Zynga says. They might very well have a lawsuit on their hands, but maybe there's some legalese that they think will protect them from any successful lawsuits. The next game in the Picross series on Switch is a Doraemon crossover. Picross S Doraemon and F Characters Edition is out later this month. Is this coming to the West? I knew about this, but I wasn't sure it was coming to the West. And then apparently Team Ninja is investigating reports that Rise of the Ronin on PC is wiping save data. PC version was released last week and players say their saves are being deleted. Yeah. That highlights a real issue as far as Steam's file access APIs or games file access APIs in general, and Windows file access APIs. And yeah, Windows has a really inconsistent setup of where save games would even be saved. They have several ideas, I think, that they've had over the decades as to where a save game file should be. But yeah, always keep a backup. They're only allowed to write to save files, they're not allowed to delete them type security file access system would make a lot of sense. Copy on write, always backup concepts would make a lot of sense. Yeah. It is weird for them to say they are investigating, though. Sorry. At this point, I probably should just turn off my phone. I'm getting a whole bunch of spam calls. I'm not getting any calls from anybody important, but I still am in a situation where I might get an important call or two. It probably will be close to a year before I can get back to turning it off and just ignoring phone calls. Yeah, I would prefer them to say that they have found a problem or that they don't believe there is a problem instead of just saying they're investigating it. That would be my hope. Yeah, I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to really hurry here. Sorry, I'm going quiet. Let's go through the Gematsu articles. Again, I had to open everything myself, but it really does seem like just because I'm starting earlier, because it's Monday, there isn't really that much news. So we have like this week's Japanese game releases. Here we have Assassin's Creed Shadows, Atelier Yumiya. There will be several Atelier Yumiya games, I'm sure, eventually. Bleach Rebirth of Souls is finally out after what felt like at least a year of it advertising on a semi-frequent basis. Bato Bird Special Edition, I don't know what that is. Final Fantasy 1 through 7 Collector's Collection Memorial Package. NBA 2K25 and Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. And then a fairly small list of digital only releases. And then they're separating demos and betas out and updates. So like the God of War Dark Odyssey collection update and Mortal Kombat DLC characters update are now in their own separate section. Which, yeah, that's probably a smart move. It's going to keep things a little bit tidier, particularly for the weeks when you start to have long lists of games. And it definitely feels like when there are more physical games being released, there are less digital games being released. It is almost a one-for-one balance there. Dreams of Another has added a PC version. It was previously announced for PS5. It's some kind of VR game. Oh, I think this was the weird one where you're shooting clouds. Yeah, weird one. Oh, while I'm looking at a Steam page, it did occur to me that I now have to be fairly careful when manually opening up games on Steam. Because if I open something up that I had left open to make a YouTube short on it, then it will close the tab even in a different window because of my auto closer, which means I very possibly won't make a YouTube short on it after all, assuming I open the tab and then immediately close it and don't leave it to make a YouTube short later, which is very possibly what happened while I was opening up shorts today. Is that a huge deal? Not really. I'm like still 500 YouTube shorts behind. If you are subscribed to my channel, you might start to see the shorts come out. It is still very much a situation where maybe 1 out of 20 hits and gets any views at all, and then the rest of them are not seen at all. But yeah, I definitely have a lot more scheduling and catch up that I need to do with YouTube Shorts, and then at some point I actually need to schedule the pre-recorded footage from airing. I am getting closer and closer to 1,000 subscribers. Not really getting anywhere closer, though, to getting enough watch time, 4,000 watch hours. Let's see, Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yabai, the Hinokami Chronicles, 2 character trailers are available. So they've got 3 characters to show off here. If you are interested in that, I think it is actually, the name of the game is the Hinokami Chronicles 2 instead of perhaps 2 character trailers are available, particularly since there are actually 3 characters being listed here. Let's see, a poker-based roguelike RPG adventure game, Hero's Hand, has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. It'll be interesting to see if this game ends up being rated and for mature, and that it has more to do with poker. Alright, that looks somewhat interesting, although it doesn't feel like you're really playing poker. If I was to guess, looking at this, you are able to probably manipulate a lot of stuff here and maybe pick up the cards that you step on to build the best hand you could possibly make. So yeah, I definitely don't think there's going to be an aspect here where you're actually playing poker of any kind. One would assume they would go with the good old Texas Hold'em, which is most popular at the moment, has been for a very long time now, at least a decade or two. Oh yeah, I also added a thing where I'll show it in a second. You can scroll down here, and I added a gesture so that it scroll back up to the top very quickly. That'll save me quite a bit of time. Let's see, the Hopetown Kickstarter campaign is launched. It's seeking £25 in funding. Pounds instead of US dollars. Karma, the Dark World demo for PS5 and PC is now available. I'm still not really sure if everything would work, if Firefox was working, as far as how my macros go. Like ideally. Yeah. And now that I have an anti-duplicate tab plugin running, I wonder if that would actually change things also. I think what I'm going to have to do is see if I can make a shortcut to turn off that plugin so it's turned off while my macros are running and then turned back on. My macros already do that for a different plugin, so that wouldn't be too hard. Monaco 2 launches April 10th. Hacking, hijinks, and high-stake heisting. I think we've already been told this, but maybe we have an actual release date now. And that brings me to gaming on Linux, and I'm gonna have to reprogram that to make sure it's not opening duplicate tabs. Gaming on Linux really changed how their whole website looked, so it's not super surprising that I need to tweak the code to handle the website. But yeah. Former Blue System devs have formed Tech Paladin Software to work on KDE with Valve as their first client. Blue Systems basically wanted to be a charitable organization is what I got from this, and so it seems like pretty much everybody from Blue Systems that was working on KDE for themselves, or KDE for Valve in particular, has now just moved over to a different entity called Tech Paladin Software, which then will get clients to work them as kind of a consultancy group. Otherwise, it feels like basically nothing has changed. The best thing you could say about this is that more people are talking about KDE, and more people are potentially learning what KDE is with these kinds of headlines. Of course, this kind of article really is only going to show up on Linux websites. It didn't show up at Gamatsu or Video Games Chronicle. But yeah. And we have even bigger news starting to show up around SteamOS and its desktop mode, which uses KDE Plasma. KDE itself, I think, is a little bit more than just the desktop environment, though, as it's kind of a collection of also supportive software like KDE Connect. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 3 was announced and is in development. Still weird that that's how they phrased it. Clearly the press release said that, but pretty much anything that's announced would be assumed to be in development. Let's see. Epic Games Store is ignoring Linux and Steam Deck and instead putting Fortnite on Windows ARM. Then there's some Prime Gaming games being given away. Which, yeah. They probably should mention what the price of these games would be every month if you paid for them in full. You could definitely get some fairly big numbers if Prime Gaming took the full price of each of these games and added together $400 or $500 easily every month. It would be a good sales pitch. NVIDIA RTX Remix has been released, plus Half-Life 2 RTX demo arrives on March 18th. I think I already covered this article. And yeah, I still don't really suspect I would ever want to cover anything using RTX Remix. I'd need a specific game and a specific sales pitch that convince me. The Steam Deck has hit 18,000 games playable and verified, which ironically, like, that's almost exactly the same 1/10 of what, or 10 times what I own as far as games on Steam. So yeah, when I think of it that way, I have plenty of games to play, although it really comes down to the specific games I want to play. So 18,000 games on Steam Deck would imply that if you can just find that 1 out of every 10 of those games is something you're willing to play, you would be very satisfied. And I do think that is very doable. Particularly depending on how much free time you have and how much time you're going to play on a Steam Deck versus playing on any other PC or laptop. So SteamOS 3.7.0 preview brings, quote, the beginnings of support for non-Steam Deck handhelds. Now, it's important to point out, handhelds, they are not anywhere close to saying that they're going to support non-handhelds. That being said, it might be fairly easy to install a SteamOS version 4.0, which is probably what it'll be called, on a non-handheld, perhaps with some limitations in that you might have to have a UPS battery backup plugged into your computer, otherwise it yells at you. And yeah, there might be some hardware limitations or tweaks that you would have to do. There really isn't a great argument why SteamOS wouldn't work on a desktop computer, other than the fact that it's expecting buttons to always be around, and it would be expecting battery to always be plugged into it. But yeah, there might be some limitations in SteamOS 4.0, though, that it might really only target a very small selection of mobile CPUs and processors and GPUs, and it may not really have the built-in support as far as drivers goes for desktop CPUs and GPUs. And there still will probably be the matter of printer support and other kinds of accessories that you might plug into a desktop and not even think about it, that a handheld would never really be expected to be able to handle. Printers, scanners, I don't know what else though, really. And those really are small things. So yeah. Apparently this was a Pi Day update. We have a full list. So it's updated to a newer Arch Linux base. It's updating the Linux kernel. It's updated the Mesa graphics driver base. And now desktop mode ships with Plasma 6.2.5. So all of those might be fairly large changes. I mean, when your kernel's going up, almost everything is going up at that point. And so then they just say beginnings of support for non-Steam Deck handhelds, and controller support for handhelds already existed and is getting improved. Bluetooth is always going to be an issue, but yeah. Let's see. HFP and HSP profiles to allow using integrated microphone from headsets and earbuds. It's currently only available in desktop mode. They've added battery level display for supported Bluetooth devices, which you had to use a mod to get that before. Which, yeah, as they continue to improve things, I think a lot of the Decky plugin mods are going to prove to be non-necessary anymore. Yeah, there might be an issue, certainly if you tried to put SteamOS on your computer, that it might want to fight you on using VPNs. And that is one thing you might do on a computer that you probably wouldn't do on a handheld. Although in all fairness, you probably should do it on a handheld too. Particularly on a handheld. If you're taking your Steam Deck somewhere and you're connecting to a public Wi-Fi thing, immediately VPNing after you get connected to the internet is a smart move. VPNs almost always are a smart move as far as security wise, even if you are just VPNing back to your own house and not bouncing it around the world. Let's see. Apparently they've improved the dock. It's still crazy the dock has to get plug-in improvements. And yeah, they're improving apparently AMD's power state CPU frequency control. I assume that's what P stands for. So yeah, the fact that they've updated KDE Plasma, the desktop, to 6.25 from 5.27.10, there's major changes there. I think one of the things that might be major changes there would be that Plasma 6 uses Wayland by default. Surround sound now works correctly. Didn't know it wasn't working. File Light is installed by default for disk usage for visualization and low disk space notifications, so they've added a whole default program. Fix the common cause of hangs when switching the desktop mode. Yeah, it definitely felt like when you switched to desktop mode, you would hang quite a bit as the Steam client was loading in particular. They've added GoCrypt FS support to desktop session to enable the use of Plasma Vault's feature. Interesting. So that doesn't feel like that's full disk encryption. One thing that they have added though to SteamOS, and they must have done this in a previous update, is you can now have it require you to type in using buttons or on the screen a code to unlock the device. Which, yeah, being able to prevent a thief from immediately enjoying your Steam Deck by having a code on it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, this is our first big update in a while. There's been a lot of small updates, and I thought it was just going to be a case where it would be small updates until a 4.0 version gets released. And yeah, this is probably betas for the beta of 4.0. But yeah, moving up to 6.11 on the kernel. I think the newest kernel is like 6.15. I could be totally wrong about that. Swap file setup now uses a standard make swap functionality instead of shipping in an ad hoc make swap file script. So yeah, a lot of interesting improvements there. Of course, also a lot of nerdy improvements also. Okay, and this is KDE's website as far as Plasma 6. Transition to the latest version of our application framework Qt and the migration to the modern Linux graphics platform Wayland. Interesting. Were they using Qt before? I wonder. But yeah, Wayland's the bigger, more interesting thing. Now, in fairness, a lot of what Plasma 6 can offer is not going to be fully utilized in a 7-inch screen handheld. Partial support for high dynamic range. You can adjust colors using an ICC profile. They also have color blindness filters, new wallpapers, although the wallpapers may be different for SteamOS. Changing how floating profiles work, changing some of the defaults, changing some of the way things look, although kind of hard to really compare there. It looks like the font might be a little bit bigger, and that's just about it. Reorganizing settings. A window switching cube, but I'm not going to really switch sessions or whatever it's called. It's a nice little effect. Perhaps improved search features. Yep, which search was pretty bad. Things like fingerprint unlocks non-existent on the Steam Deck, although not a terrible thought if there was a fingerprint option. And then a whole bunch of software I imagine that they have improved upon. Itinerary, didn't know about that one. Educational software. Video editor. File Explorer, Screenshot Utility, and more. So one thing I would imagine is that I wouldn't expect SteamOS version 4 to probably go much further as far as upgrading KDE. I just don't think there will be another newer version of KDE Plasma that will be significantly different. Like KDE 7 probably will be out in years, not months. Man, I'm still moving really slow. Let's see, a mech combat mechanized game called Mechanized Corpse Rebirth is in early access. Yeah, every time I open one of these tabs and close it, I'm probably locking down that I'm not going to make a YouTube short around it. Linux GPU Configuration Tool LACT adds AMD RDNA 4 support and NVIDIA locked clock support. There's a list here of what else that it's doing. OpenRaiser and Polychromic upgrades bring support for new Razer devices on Linux. Some of these articles we probably have covered before. Cooler control is a feature-rich cooling device control for Linux, version 2.0 out with major new additions. Again, a list here of what you can do. A supernatural horror adventure game called Asylum is finally out, but the Linux version is delayed. Nightingale gets fonts improvements for the Steam Deck. So a specific game changing its font just for the Steam Deck, it seems. Which, yeah, that does speak to enthusiasm, certainly. Crusader Kings 3 Chapter 4 announced as the next major expansion in April. Assassin's Creed Shadows is now Steam Deck verified after originally saying that it wasn't even going to support the Steam Deck. And then Counter-Strike Legacy has been announced as a full standalone remake of Counter-Strike 1.6. So that definitely sounds like an interesting thing, but I'm not sure it's actually being made by Valve or if it's actually being made by a bunch of fans. Yeah. And apparently it doesn't even have a Steam page, so there might be some question as to whether it even shows up on Steam. Steam may very well not want something called Counter-Strike Legacy confusing people or convincing people to not play Counter-Strike game that they sell. That brings us to GameDeveloper.com. Inside UFO's 50 Incredible 8-Bit Journey is an article here I guess you could read. There's a report that Assassin's Creed maker Ubisoft could create new IP unit to court major investors. Wouldn't it be easier just to say there's a report that says Ubisoft could create new IP? Which, yeah, I imagine Ubisoft can do just about anything. And at some level, they did have a massive amount of success for a very long time by creating Assassin's Creed instead of just making yet another Prince of Persia game, which Assassin's Creed 1 basically is a Prince of Persia game. So maybe they want to recapture that level of success. But if they actually succeeded, that would be a completely different thing. And wouldn't you generally expect that every company could create new IP to court major investors? Perhaps it's a little crass to say it out loud like that, but I would like every company to be creating new IP. Although this is an IP unit where really, as a gamer, I just wanted to create new IP. I don't care if they have a unit or not in charge of it. A game, I guess, called Human Computer has raised $5.7 million in a funding round. Well, I guess that's not a game. That's a company called Human Computer. It's an indie studio. Okay. And then Icepick Lodge founder Nikolay Dybowski has departed the Pathologic developer. Pathologic players recently uncovered allegations of abuse and kidnapping against Dybowski and called on Icepick to act. Well, it's not every day you have allegations of kidnapping, although in fairness, kidnapping could be a lot of different things. You could lock a door on somebody for 5 minutes and that would be considered kidnapping, or you can straight up grab a kid off the street and that's kidnapping, or grab an adult off the street. I guess the word napping is not actually used in the English language, or adult napping is not actually used. So yeah, they're saying he chose to leave to focus on personal projects in his private life. He also directed 2013's game Knock Knock. Interesting. Okay, well, I guess you basically just have to leave it at that. It feels like there was a whole bunch of drama here that totally I didn't hear about at all. Which usually I do hear about the drama in video games, so I'm a little surprised on this one. Yeah, and who knows what's going on in Russia these days, so who knows what to really believe. Alright, well that's going to bring out all the new games on Steam, which let's burn through these fairly quickly so I can fall asleep. Again, I will have to question myself as far as whether I should have actually just taken a nap and then streamed later this evening. I'm still getting a decent amount of views, so really don't know what happened there, but I guess I appreciate it. To get more views, I got a big bump and now it seems like I'm getting more than the usual 2 to 3 views still. But yeah, if I was really smart, I would definitely be putting out more pre-recorded footage and try to bring those viewers to the content that I actually would prefer them to watch. Here we have another Arthur game. Several of these had already been released to really no avail. Like, I suppose Arthur is probably not that popular. It's old. I'm not sure it ever was really that popular, particularly in the United States and English countries. But yeah, I'm still not certain whether these are older games. They feel like they would be older games. If somebody is like making these right now and putting them out, I would be very confused as to why. But then again, there aren't that many kids games, so any is appreciated at all. I guess the only thing to really be questioning is if it was the same games getting released over and over again, which I don't believe it is. Speed running platformer. This feels like it would look like something like Jill of the Jungle. Which I still feel like there probably should be a Jill of the Jungle like game, but it probably needs to play differently than just a generic platformer. And Lara Croft basically is that type of character. But the name is too good to really not use it. Yeah. I guess I'll show off the non-VR version of that game. I really haven't had that issue before where you have a VR version and a non-VR version. This is probably nothing as far as a horror game goes. Yeah, you could definitely make something like Ori in the Blind Forest with a Jill of the Jungle type character. You could make something that looks and feels a lot like Lara Croft, but just have her not use guns, and then that would still be fairly different. I feel like this management game happens too often. And I guess my desire would probably be that you'd have like a Metroid game with a Jill of the Jungle type character. I wonder if the name is even copyrightable, or if you couldn't just make a new game called Jill of the Jungle right now. Very few people would even remember the original Jill of the Jungle. It's such an old kind of shareware game from the 90s. Never went anywhere and never was really that popular. At some point I still need to do follow-list cleanups. That's also a thing. Yeah. A Metroidvania where you're in a jungle, you're fighting basically regular animals, with maybe some of them being like magical for like boss fights. You're finding maybe mystical magical totems. To get power-ups. Yeah. That would work, I think, very well. If I was more awake, I'd probably have some more enthusiasm as I'm thinking about it. Because Castlevania, as far as the Vania part of that, is magical vampires being fought. And Metroid is sci-fi space marine fighting sci-fi aliens. So an adventure doesn't really conflict with that. An Indiana Jones style type adventure doesn't conflict in those regions. maybe you could make even a zombie fighting Metroidvania game and a Wild West Metroidvania game. Some of those genres I think might work pretty well. Yeah, we still get your occasional political games, but not very often. I kind of wonder if Valve is kind of cracking the whip a little bit more on what games get approved on Steam, because it does definitely feel like we're seeing a little bit less just asset flip garbage nonsense. But you would think if that was the case that somebody would be complaining publicly if that was the case. Yeah, Wild West Metroidvania is another thought. Of course, I'm a huge fan of Metroidvanias, but it would be a very different experience. You'd have to have like a lot of mine shafts and caves to start with, and I would think you would end up probably just getting improved guns a lot. Like maybe you could get a horse as an upgrade. But yeah, you could use TNT dynamite instead of super missiles, and you could use guns instead of the Metroid blaster. You could be fighting all kinds of bad guys and animals. The most difficult thing of a Western Metroidvania would be probably just being set in a desert area, where that would perhaps visually be boring. Yeah, and I'm still seeing a few games there that look interesting enough to make a YouTube short on it, but it also still is really a case where less and less of these big AAA games feel like they're coming out ever. And so yeah, I really wonder when are the games going to actually start showing up, the big AAA games. Are we waiting until Black Friday, or are we waiting till next year or the year after that? It's kind of hard to know for certain when they're finally gonna start to put things out. And it may be actually quite a small number of AAA games that actually come out. Anyways, yeah, at a certain point, I guess if it's only to be expected, though, because they've laid off so many people, that the pace at which AAA games were once released cannot be continued. And even if they hadn't laid off a bunch of people, there is still the case that games are getting made at higher budgets, and fewer games are being made to accommodate that. Alright, well, even half asleep, I've managed to take less than 2 hours to stream. If only every stream was this long, that would be great. That being said, I imagine Wednesday will be a lot longer because we'll probably have more games out and more news. That's going to be it for the stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.